Did we make it?
I think we made it. I think maybe indeed we've made it. Glory, hallelujah. I was not sure that was going to happen or not.
That already feels like a win for today. I think we can be done now.
We can all go home. We can all just go home and know that we succeeded. And oh, hold on.
Bonus music.
This is what happens when you play ads. That's all my fault. How's it going, you guys? Welcome. Thank you for your patience this beautiful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Sorry, we're 8 minutes late, but we had some technical difficulties per usual. But that is one of the things that happens when you're a photographer, right? And this was a test of our photography skills to see if we would stick with it and keep working at it. And we did. We did not give up. So when you hit a technical hurdle, you just keep working at it, right, Lauren?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, very good. Welcome. So glad you guys are here. We've got Christine's in the house and Chris. We've got Dima. Welcome, you guys. We're so glad to have you here this morning. Well, I'm going to say this morning because that's what time it is here. But Lauren, being on the other side of the world, what time is it there, Lauren?
It is 9 minutes past 5 in the evening.
Brilliant.
Or afternoon.
I'm having a cup of coffee. She's having a little happy hour. So we've got it all covered. So I'm sure many of you already are familiar with Lauren, love her channel just like I do, and all of her amazing food photography resources. But for those of you who don't know Lauren, this is Lauren Karras from That Sage. I have her channel linked down in the description box below. So be sure to go follow her, check her out, go watch all her videos. She is a fellow fan of the artificial light, and she's got some great tutorials on that, which I know everybody here just loves talking lighting, and tons of great resources. Oh, Mr. Cat just left a bunch of cats for you there, Lauren.
Amazing. I do love a cat.
I love it. So, okay, well, we have a jam-packed, super fun schedule today. Just to kind of recap what we've been doing the last month, we were covering macro photography. So we had a book that we were reading together as part of the Bite Shop Book Club. And it was all about macro photography. And I hope you all had as much fun as I did diving into that book. And, you know, there's definitely a lot of technical that goes along with macro, which Lauren well knows, but hopefully you learned a lot through the course of those videos. And then today we are celebrating the submissions that you all made last week. I announced we were doing a quick fire photo challenge. I only gave you 4 or 5 days to turn around images. So we collected over 536 images, which Lauren and I then, how hard was that, Lauren, to go through 536?
It was so hard, but it was so much fun. Like I love a good macro shot. So it was just like an excuse to sit down and look at a lot of macro pictures. So.
Oh, they're beautiful. So many fun things. And they were definitely funny. I know there were a couple moments, you know, because like last week we talked about abstract photography and capturing macro shots where it's like, what is that? And there were definitely a couple that for me, I was like, I wonder what that is, right?
Yeah.
So, oh, good. Dima says she's going to print 25-page cookbook. Oh, we're going to get, so Dima, great question. We're going to jump in at the end. We're going to save the Q&A for the end. So we're going to get through some little housekeeping here first and talk a little bit about macro, and then we'll get into the Q&A at the end. So, first up, just talking about macro photography. I mean, obviously we went through a lot in the last couple weeks worth of videos. But Lauren, you and Rachel from Two Love Studio went through a series, how many months ago now?
Oh, I want to say it was at least like the summer last year.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, but yeah.
And it was a phenomenal series, also in macro photography, where you and Rachel really dived into this topic, created some amazing resources. For those of you who've not read those blog posts and the content with that, I've got a link down below. But for you, Lauren, when you and Rachel, you know, got into the, what was the hashtag you all used? Get macro?
It was shoot macro.
Shoot macro, that's right.
Yeah.
So when you guys went through that shoot macro challenge, there had to have been some aha moments for people, were there?
Yeah. So I think what we tried to do, so I focused on what makes a macro lens different to any other lens. And then Rachel was really focusing on focus and really helping, because a lot of people we found were saying like, they just don't come out sharp. My pictures don't look right. And I know that you talked about that quite a bit in the video last week about how, you know, shutter speeds might be different, and any tiny little movement is just going to show up like nothing else on a macro shot. So yeah, and also just understanding how depth of field. I was thinking about it earlier, and I was going to say how like it works completely differently with macro photography, whereas it doesn't, but it behaves differently just because of the different distances. So you kind of have to put yourself in this different mindset where normally we're used to shooting, you know, maybe on a sort of 3-foot scene, that the depth of field acts a certain way, but squish all those distances to like centimeters, suddenly things are very different, and the way you use your aperture is very different. So yeah, it's a very cool topic.
Definitely. And so for you, I mean, you've got some beautiful macro shots that I've seen come through your feed on a regular basis. The one of the bunt that you posted most previously.
Oh yeah, this morning.
Yeah. What was, what was your thought process in setting up that shot? For those of you who are not following Lauren, you can find her. What's your Instagram handle?
It's lauren.caris.
Perfect. I'm going to drop that in the comments. But talk us through that process, like setting up that shot and knowing you're going to take that macro image. What are some of the things you're keeping in mind in setting up a shot like that?
Yeah, so a lot of the things are similar to the kind of things that I keep in mind for any shot. Like lighting is going to dictate so much of your shot. And when you're in a macro situation, everything you do is just magnified. So you really want to make sure that that light is exactly where you want it. So I shot that with artificial light, no surprise. I was using I was using flash with a 120 centimeter softbox. And what I was really trying to do was the cake itself had this like lemony, crispy icing on it, which kind of dried a little bit sticky. So the cake wasn't 100% dry, which meant it was like, I had a really good opportunity for specular highlight. So that for sure was something that I knew as I'm setting up the light, I'm setting up the positioning. I want to make sure that I'm capturing that specular. So it's a standard flat lay. So I have my camera on my boom arm pointing down, got the cake where I wanted it. And then I really started playing around with the positioning of the light. And I ended up with sort of kind of like a diagonal backlight. Top light, it's not really backlight in a flat lay, but it's sort of coming in at an angle to really accentuate the speculars and also capture that texture from the ridges. So yeah, there was a lot of texture going on. And then in terms of depth of field, I want to say I shot it at like f18 or something, or f16. So because again, once you're that close up, you need a much bigger aperture to capture that detail. Otherwise, if your depth of field is too thin, you're using a really wide aperture, you're going to lose all that detail very quickly, and then the shot just ends up not having as much impact. So
because you were shooting it, I can maybe pull it up, but there's a lot of ridges that are in that cake, and so you think about the top of one of those ridges to the bottom of one of those ridges. That's quite a bit of distance when we're in the world of macro.
Yeah, it is. I have it here if anyone hasn't seen it.
There it is.
Yeah, so the tin itself sort of already had all this texture, and then the specular was kind of coming down. So really with the light, I wanted to make sure that the shadow was capturing those ridges. If I had the light coming this way, it would have just gone straight through the tunnels and looked a bit flat. So
a lot to think about. So when we're doing this kind of close-up detail work, one of the keys is definitely like no small detail should go unconsidered, that you really should be thinking through all of those factors. So it's a little, would you say, a less forgiving medium in terms of photography?
Definitely. This is something that we were saying last year, is like any mistake you make is magnified as much as the little tiny details. So like if your light isn't quite right, or your focus point is a little bit off, like you're just going to see it even more. So it's a very technical part of food photography. So there's a lot to learn.
Well worth training your eye. Something else a couple 100%. Of folks had mentioned that they'd run into in doing the challenge, specifically in practicing their macro photography, is realizing maybe what was there on the surface of the subject that they didn't see, like little hairs or dust particles, or things that you're going to need to do some cleanup on or post-processing on. Has that happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. I do way more retouching on macro shots than I do on, normal distance shots, because you do want to make sure that you're showing off the best qualities, and you can spend hours picking that one perfect little slice of cucumber, but there just might be a couple of things that if they end up being distractions, then it's worth retouching them to make sure that, you know, you get to focus on the good qualities.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, when I was shooting, there's a pretzels image that I've used to promote a lot of this
I love
content,
that one.
and there was a crack, it like a hairline, like a minuscule crack that I did not see with my own eyes, like just in putting it in the scene. I thought I'd picked this perfect little pretzel, but once I got it under the, you know, under that macro lens, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a crack there. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So, well, good. Well, any of you who want to check out that blog post that Lauren had written back from the Shoot Macro Challenge a number of months ago, we've got that link down in the description box below, so you can go grab that. But now what we've done, oh, one real quick thing though. You know, Lauren and I talk on a fairly regular basis because we're in this industry together and we love teaching food photography, and it's always great to connect with one another. And so Lauren was telling me about a very fun project that she's been working on that is an amazing resource that I want to make sure you guys hear about. And it is called, what is it called, Lauren? Food Photography Academy?
Yeah, that's it.
Can you tell us just a little bit about, it's like a teaser, because it's not like a fit, it's like kind of still under the radar a little bit, but it's coming.
Yeah. So basically what it is I've decided to put all of my online courses inside a creative membership platform. So basically you can join for a month, you can join for 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, whatever you want. And then you get access to all of my courses, a tech vault with a bunch of resources. We do a live masterclass every month, which maybe Joni will be coming to teach one, maybe, who knows.
I won't tell. I'll keep it a secret.
and there's also a built-in forum community. So we don't have any like Facebook groups. So whether you're on Facebook or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone's in there. It's really cool. We're doing like a quiet little beta test at the moment, but the wait list is officially open and I'm hoping it's coming like April. So if you want to join the wait list to be notified about that, then I think the link is down below.
It is down
with everything
below.
Else.
Everything and all the things you've ever needed in life are all down in the description.
It's all in the description box.
Below. The DBB, as the kids say. I don't think they say that. I think I made that up. But yeah, Christine says that's such a great idea, Lauren, and I totally agree. So Lauren's got some incredible resources, everything from composition to lighting, to everything in between, post-processing. We were going back and forth because there's a lot that lives in Lightroom that people like myself who use Lightroom all the time, like pretty much nearly on an everyday basis, there's still things that I'm learning. And you're like, did you know? And I'm like, I did not know that. So it's all coming at you in Lauren's course. So, well, very good. Well, let's get on with why I think a lot of you are here is to see the 6 images. We both picked 3 images. Lauren picked 3. I picked 3. You all submitted over 536 images. We combed through all of them and looked for the ones that really exemplified everything that we've talked about in the world of macro photography this month. Images that really capitalize on the beauty of shooting close up, shooting macro. For you, Lauren, as you were looking through the images, what were you specifically looking for?
So I was looking for something that made me stop and look at it because it had a bit of a creative edge. And then obviously like great lighting, a really nailed focus with a lot of detail, and yeah, just an image that kind of made me stop and go, oh, that's cool.
Right.
And it was hard to pick 3. Let me put it that way. There was a lot more than 3 that I really liked.
Oh, there were so many beautiful images. So certainly everybody who took the time and entered, we greatly appreciate it. And hopefully, I think it was definitely stretching skills these last weeks, and people were getting creative. So let's go ahead and let's start the sharing process. So I'm going to start off with one of your selections, Lauren.
Okay.
Let me pull it up here. All right. So it looks like we've got Benjamin Hochschild.
Yeah. So I just thought this was the first one that I picked. I just thought it was so creative. The technique is incredible. We were saying it just before the call, like we're not 100% sure how you captured this, whether it was just like a really happy coincidence that there was a little leaf inside a leaf. He even named this picture Blatt im Blatt, which is leaf in leaf in German, which thought was very cool. But what I love about this image is not only the composition is really quirky and interesting, and it kind of draws you into this story, but also just the detail captured on those, like every single little ice crystal is in focus and everything's just got this amazing texture. The light is beautiful. I just loved it. I thought it was so creative.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to hear from Benjamin his process on this and how he came across this little leaf. And that just little, you know, I think sometimes in macro photography, photos can get a little boring, right? Because we've got a lot of repetition and things like that. But there's so much movement, but also just the way that light comes through is just,
yeah,
stunning.
It's very, very cool.
I would say this is one of those kind of images that could very easily be put on a wall as a piece of fine art photography.
Oh, 100%. I would print that and have it on my wall.
Print that up, Benjamin. We can't wait. Benjamin, if you're here, let us know, because we want to know what was your process. Fantastic work. All right, let's go ahead and stop the share, hop back into the next one here. All right, I'm going to pick up one that I selected.
I'm curious to know which
one. Curious. Okay, so we both were talking about it and we're like, well, we didn't do all food, right? Because it was said it was kind of open-ended, right? Could be food, could be non-food, but needed to be still life. So both of us, interestingly enough, both picked 2 foods and 1 floral, like non-food sort of thing. So we both did that without even consulting one another. So let's go ahead and let me share the next one. There we go. All right. So we've got some more. We've got some, I don't know if these are what kind of flowers these are. I really need to up my flower knowledge game, because I do think that flowers are just so much fun. These might be nasturtiums, so potentially actually they are edible, depending. But I love the movement. Again, very similar to the leaf photo that we just looked at. There's a lot of movement going on here, and we get sort of this diagonal from the upper left to the lower right, partially because the gradient of the way that those shadows sort of sink in. And, you know, I think too, from a macro standpoint, when we think about that depth of field, like there's a very delicate balance in this image that Braden Houston, you did a fantastic job really getting that depth of field so that we get that softness on the edges due to that more narrow depth of field, but that there's enough depth there in order to capture, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
So that we get sort of this, we get enough depth that we get the detail in here and that we've not lost what is technically the subject, right? Because we've got so much pattern going on here, but we have a defined subject. And that the way this little green pops out, I just think it's a really lovely image and very natural. So yeah, I don't know if you have any comments on this one, Lauren.
Yeah, I love it. I think it is, like you said, it's such a clever use of depth of field, because if it was actually wider, if every flower was in focus, then I think you'd struggle to see a subject, a main focus. But he's really used the depth of field to highlight that middle flower and kind of let everything else melt into that. Like you're just drawn straight to it.
Yeah.
And the colors are beautiful.
The colors are stunning. And they're, you know, these are colors that can get a little out of control very fast, but I see there's a lot of restraint in the way that the colors were processed here. So bravo on you, Braden. And according to the commentary in the group, it looks like that these are hydrangeas is what we're estimating.
Cool. I'm probably the world's worst botanist. I actually killed my mint plant, which apparently is impossible. So.
Oh, you killed your mint plant?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Hydrangea, not edible, says Heather. So don't try and eat this.
Don't eat those.
Not nasturtiums. You can eat nasturtiums, but don't eat the hydrangeas. Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's go on to another one of Lauren's selections. Which one am I going to pick, Lauren? Which one am I going to pick? All right, here, I'm going to pick this one. I think I'm going to share them in the order that you sent them to me. Okay, here we go. Next one up. Here we go. This is from Myra Perkins.
Oh, cool. So again, this was just an image that stopped me through my scrolling. And I was like, oh, I just need to take a minute and look at this. So, I mean, number one, the colors they're so soft. Everything has this like fluid, soft gradient. It's almost like the softness of the background and that gray blends with the gradients in the pinks, the way it goes from this dark pink to light pink. But then you get these really like snappy bursts of the contrast of the, do they have a name, those suckers? What
are those?
I know the thing is a tentacle, but like the sucker bits, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, and it's just like the composition, the fact that it's on the left a bit, it's a bit off center. It's a great composition, and the diagonals, really cool image. And also, again, with depth of field in this one, we've got a really nice balance of having a really soft background, but the majority of the actual subject is actually really in focus. And I think that allows you to kind of soak in the detail of those spirals. And I'm going to keep saying suckers, even I'm almost 100% sure that is not the correct term. And I can't see the chat, so Joni, you'll have to tell me.
I'll keep you posted if the answer comes through.
But yeah, you really get to appreciate all of that detail, and I think it makes it one of those stop viewing your tracks images.
Yeah. And I mean, when we're thinking about that, because that's a really good point, that so much of that subject from, the front of the octopus to the back of it, that's in focus, and that background though is super duper soft. So somebody wanting to replicate that sort of look, what would be your recommendation in terms of their aperture? And then in terms of the setup, what are things that you would keep in mind to achieve that look?
Yeah, so definitely with macro, if you want to achieve this kind of depth of field when you're that close to the subject, you are going to be looking at probably a minimum of f11 upwards. If not, I would imagine this one was probably a lot narrower in terms of aperture. So don't be afraid of that, and know that means you are going to have to compensate. If you're using natural continuous light, you're going to need a really slow shutter speed, which pretty much makes a tripod non-negotiable for these kind of shots. Like there's no way you can get a good exposure handheld shooting at f22 in a normal, daylight situation. And if you're using flash, you're going to have to use a pretty high flash power to compensate. But
yeah. And then also just making sure that background is far enough away.
Exactly. It's because it's all about like depth perception and the relative distance. So if you've got this much distance between your camera and the subject, if you have this much distance to your background, it's still going to kind of come into that focus. But if you have more distance between the subject and the background than between the camera and the subject, you're going to get that really nice sort of blurry depth of field in the background.
Yeah, it's a beautiful job, Myra.
It's really, really nice.
Yeah. The other thing I'll be curious, because I'm sure if Myra's not here right now, that maybe she'll post online, because usually after we share these images, anybody who wasn't here for the live stream and we selected their images will usually share something on their Instagram after the fact, and talking through the process. So certainly anyone whose images have been shared will be shared. Feel free to share your process, and I'll be sure to Lauren and I will be sure to let everybody know via Instagram, send that insight. But the other thing that could have happened here potentially too was maybe focus stacking. So that could have been another strategy as well. So, just like anything in photography, there's a lot of ways to accomplish the same thing. And
there is.
It's a matter of the tools that you have available. But that was an excellent selection, Lauren. I loved it. All right, here we go. Let's go on to the next one. Number four. Let's see now I'm trying to remember which ones did I pick. Oh, okay. This one, here we go. Share screen. There we go. All right. So I if I'm not mistaken, this is some okra.
I was going to say, I think it's okra.
So any good Southern folks in the house would be very intimately acquainted with this particular vegetable. This, like Lauren said, I selected this image because it definitely, had that makes me stop and look at it longer sort of effect. In terms of that close up, I mean, we're seeing those little tiny hairs. And for me, I've grown okra before in the garden, and one of the beautiful things about it are those little hairs. But in this case, like, it's almost like a little, like the way that the light has been applied and the way that the composition goes, like they almost look like they're kind of evil spikes, you know, like
Yeah.
there's something a little aggressive about this
Yeah.
photo, which I kind of like. And I also think that the color is lending towards that, because a lot of times in food photography, I think we're afraid to go into some of these, you know, kind of, I wouldn't call it maybe like a, I don't know, that just, there's a lot more yellow in this as opposed to the green. And so, you know, giving us that sense that this is, you know, cooked okra versus fresh okra. But because we've gone there, like it gives it sort of just this kind of swamp thing aesthetic that I like. Cause again, it makes me feel something, it engages me with the image. And I also love the composition on this one. I think that, you know, one of the things that when we're dealing with macro photography and we start the adding multiple items to a scene, I think that the way that you've framed this is really effective, because we have, you know, this one right here, this is kind of where our eye goes first, but then we're sort of pinged between these three in that compositional kind of that curved line. And that then these two flanking it just sort of hug that, and that dark, you know, the negative space also really helps to define that. So I think that, you know, just on a lot of different levels that this image was very effective. So how about you, Lauren? Anything on this image?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said about composition, I actually really like the fact that every single one is cropped a bit, because it kind of adds a bit of curiosity. Like you can choose a little bit which one is your main one, but I like that. It's cool. I also think the lighting is really beautiful. So on the seeds on the inside, you can see you've got this really beautiful, like curved soft light. But on the fleshy bit where it's cut, there's like those little pops of specular going on that just, it gives it a lot of texture. And with the little hairs and everything, it's just, there's a lot of texture going on, and that makes it really interesting.
Yeah, and that's exactly what, you know, what we talked about. And this is from Kim Morris. Thank you, Kim, for sending this one. I'm not sure if Kim's in here. I think Kim was here earlier. But yeah, I just, like we talked about, I believe in last week's video, the importance of that, you know, understanding the light and how it's really going to maximize that texture. Again, it's an unforgiving application of photography that we really want to make the most of that. And I think Kim definitely did. Yeah, this little sparkle right here, right on that little seed. I mean, that's just those little details that just go. That's what takes it to the next level.
Definitely.
I love it. Man, I've never looked inside an okra so intimately before. I love it. Okay, let's see. And on to the third, Lauren's third selection. Here we go. This one's cool. This one's very cool. All right. So here we go, Lauren. Tell us about this one. This is from Rithika. How do you think you pronounce that?
Rithika?
Rithika?
If I'm wrong, I'm really, really sorry. Please do correct us.
Yes, please. So go for it, Lauren.
Yeah. So for me, this was such an interesting image. I am not 100% sure whether it has been converted to black and white or whether it's a naturally monochromed image, because there is a difference. I think it's been converted to black and white from what I can see. But to me, it was like when you take all the color out of a food image, you're left with light and texture. And there is so much going on in this picture, which is amazing. I'm pretty sure it's ice cubes. And just the way every single one is unique. You've got all the cracks on the inside, the gorgeous speculars like on the sort of middle right cube. I realize you can't see my mouse as I'm
middle right cube, this right here.
Yeah, we've got that incredible specular highlight, and just the contrast of the shadows, the light, the shininess. It was just, this is a really great example of an up close, I guess I'd say more abstract macro image.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Taking the color out and letting the texture and the composition and the light do all the talking.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's some powerful work there. If you are, you know, lacking all of those other things that a lot of times, especially in food, I feel like we rely on color so much.
We do.
To help us in food photography. To take that away is a major discipline. Yeah. Oh man. And yeah, and two, I like that I get the sense that it's slightly melted. So from a story standpoint, like this reminds me of when you're at a restaurant and you've got the hotel pan and they've had like the ice stacked in there and maybe they had, you know, lobsters chilling in there or oysters or something like that, that this is maybe some time is expired. So you get that very tactile sense that, you know, as opposed to if this was super fresh ice right out of the freezer.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if that melting factor was on purpose or not, but
it works.
Tell
really
us,
well.
be like, oh no, I tried to take the shot 50 times and it started to melt. But I like that. I like that melty sort of feel. Yeah, it's a very effective image. I love it. All right.
I'm excited to see your last pick.
Yep, here we go. Here we go. Coming at you, the final numero seis. I was like, wait a minute. Cinco, then seis. All right, here we go. Last but not least, share screen. Here we go. Coming in hot. We have got from Emily Miller.
Ooh.
We've got some. What do you think it is, Lauren?
Oh, do you know what? I've changed my mind since I saw it. Right. I tell you what, my first thought was, oh, it's filleted fish, like with the bones.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, I think it's the inside of an onion.
It's the inside of an onion. Yeah.
I see the title now. Okay, I didn't see that at first.
But no, this is where it gets really fun with that macro photography, right? Because you're like,
right,
which way?
But you know, like sometimes like you have like small fish that have like the little bones.
Oh yeah,
and you get that kind of like layering.
Totally, like there's almost like a whitefish kind of halibut thing going on.
Yeah, but no, I see the onion. Oh, yeah. This is cool.
I know. And I thought, man, there was, again, just like we've talked about in the previous images, and what I think Emily did so well here is really, especially, you know, kind of interestingly enough, I also picked a monochromatic shot.
Yeah, I was going to say we've both gone for one with an absence of color.
Yeah. And there's really, you know, because I think that takes a lot of technique in order to extract that texture to get those, you know, the little folds that based on the direction that the light is coming in, that it's raking across the surface to really pick up this texture. And I think compositionally, it was very smart to run this on the diagonal. Because we've just, I mean, it's a sexy onion. I'm not going to lie.
It is. It's very well cut.
Yeah.
There's some skill there to get that like perfect.
That's a good point. Emily, I'd love to know how many times you had to slice onions, or if you just cut it straight out. But yeah, it's definitely a beautiful shot just in terms of the texture. It's almost, you get the sense of layering going on here. I'd be curious too to know, one of the things that when we're shooting an image like this, where we've got kind of, it's like white on white in a sense, you know, is how much in terms of post was done here, because this still feels very delicate. It feels very soft. It doesn't feel overly processed to me. And that we've got some, you know, we've got just that little, but it is clear that it's not in black and white, because we've got just that little hint of color going on there.
Yeah. So, I love it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one, Lauren?
I think you covered it. It's one of those really interesting images. I love the simplicity.
Yeah, nice simplicity. Oh, and okay, Rithika, is that, we're apologizing in advance if we butchered your name. She has confirmed that it's not a pure black and white shot. That
awesome.
That was shot as is. So beautiful job. That was some fun visual trickery you had going on there.
Yeah.
I love it. So outstanding job to everybody who submitted images. I know I had a lot of fun going through and picking those. Lauren, I'm sure you did as well.
I really did.
Yeah. And I'll be sure, I'll see if I can't track down everybody's Instagram handles, and I will share them in stories. And Lauren, I'll send the images to you as well, so that we can share these out and tag the folks accordingly. So I think it's a lot of fun. So let's see. I'm going to make sure I'm going through and staying on track with my to-do list. Very good. Just call her Ree. We'll call you Ree, my dear. I love it. So we've got folks in here. Let's see, how many folks do we have here? We have 122 people here right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's Cupcake Ree. Oh my goodness. It's good to, now I know who you are.
Oh, I feel like we were talking the other day.
It's so funny, Because I know so many of you on Instagram, and then once you come on YouTube, like I don't know your name with your handle.
Yeah, I have the same, and I feel like I chat to people and then don't realize it's the same person. So just let us know.
Cupcakery, we loved your photo, and everybody whose photos. So we'll be reaching out to those folks, make sure we get some Instagram handles and share those out. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and fire up some Q&A for the folks, because I'm sure there are questions, certainly about macro photography, if there are things that you are still struggling with and that we can help offer some pointers with, or just other general questions. Because I know for me, Lauren, one of the best places that I get great ideas for upcoming videos is the questions people ask.
Yeah.
So let's see. I don't see any coming in quite yet. I'm going to go back up through the questions, though, see if there was any further. We did have a question up at the beginning. Let's see. And print a cookbook for friends and family. Which lens do you recommend for shooting a cookbook? Let's see.
Ooh.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Lauren?
It has to be one lens.
One lens. Well, tell me what you would pick. Like if you were going to a cookbook shoot, what would you bring with you?
Yeah, so if I was doing a cookbook shoot, I would bring my 90 macro, because I think there's always room. And something that I learned when we were doing the macro stuff last year is macro lenses, they're not only useful for the up close shots, but because they also have a shorter minimum focus distance than a normal non-macro lens, you can kind of do food portraiture a bit differently, where you can get into angles and positions that you can't with another lens. So I actually use my macro lens pretty often, not just for close-up macros. So definitely that. I would say I would definitely bring my 55. And if that was all I was allowed, I think I'd be okay with that. The 55, it's wide enough to do some flat lays. If it's a huge table scene, then it might be a bit of a struggle unless you have the ability to like rig it super high.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what I'd bring. What would you bring? Well, you've done a cookbook shoot, so
yeah. So
you can give us the real answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it's all up to you. I don't think there's a wrong lens for cookbook photography. I think it depends on your personal aesthetic or the aesthetic of, whoever's in charge of the design of the cookbook. And certainly if you're just starting out and you're like, I don't want to go spend a bunch of money on a lens, I feel like the 50 millimeter f1.8 will always be a great go-to. I will also say though, the kit lens that comes with your camera body, usually that's going to be like an 18 to 55 f4, 5, f4. That can be a really great place to start. People I think really like to say, oh, a kit lens, that's no good. I say, I love a kit lens. Like there's great images that can be taken there. So don't discount what you already have. So what you have probably would work great. But what was interesting is the cookbook that I recently shot, I kept laughing because pretty much 99% of the images I shot in that cookbook were all with the 24 to 70 f2.8 lens, because we were moving so fast. It was one chef would come in with the dish, we would shoot that, we would then shoot a portrait, next chef come in. So there was a lot of going from different scene to different scene, from portraits to food, back and forth. So that lens afforded a lot of flexibility there. Yeah. And one of the things too to consider when you're shooting a cookbook that's going to be printed is to understand that you're going to need some bleed on the edges, so that because that image will be cropped just in terms of then that print factor. So giving whoever's doing the layout, the designer, enough space on the edges so that you can lose those edges and still have an effective. It's just like the idea of when we're shooting for Instagram, right? Like we have a 2:3 in terms of our aspect ratio on our camera, but we know that we're going to need to take this to a 4:5. And so making sure to frame our subjects in such a way. So the 24 to 70 was really a workhorse for me through that whole cookbook shoot. And there was a couple times that I tell my assistant, I say, maybe this time we'll do the 100, maybe this time. And she'd throw the 100 on and I go, no, let's back to the 24 to 70. It was interesting. I like you, Lauren, for me personally, a lot of times I do a lot of shooting. Anytime I'm shooting head on, or kind of approaching it, maybe even a 45, it's usually going to be my 100 millimeter macro.
Yeah. Same.
So, which is very comparable to a 90 in terms of that crop factor.
Yeah, that's just what Sony make at the moment. Yeah. So, but it doesn't make too much difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Question. Ray's got a question about the Sony A5000. I've never shot this. I've got the Sony A6000, and I'm very pleased with it. And you're a big Sony fan, yeah, Lauren?
I am, but I have an A7 III, and I might be buying my friend's old A6500 to have as like a little second camera, which is also a crop sensor. I think the A5000 is also a crop sensor. Yeah. I mean, I think go for it. I think the quality of Sony's great.
Yeah. Can't really go wrong.
I can't comment on like personal experience, but there's nothing that I would say like, oh, stay away from that. I think it's great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Let's see. Gwen has a question. Let's see. Had a hard time getting her camera to focus when using the extension tubes tethered in live view. If I turned off the live view, then it would focus fine using back button focus in the viewfinder. Any idea why?
I have a sort of semi-different answer.
Yeah.
In that normally for that kind of close-up macro stuff, I really do recommend manual focusing because your depth of field is so precise, and you really want to have like the precision of control and know that once you've set it, it's not going to move. Because sometimes cameras just do funny things especially when you're filling the whole frame with something that's quite similar, with a lot of the similar colors and texture. It can have a hard time hunting around looking for exactly where you want to focus. So I think manual with this kind of photography generally works a bit better.
Yeah. And I do think that, extension tubes, I had a lot of fun playing with them. There are, again, some tricky aspects to them. One of the things that I found in using them, because again, they don't focus to infinity, so we can't back up too far. I would like, just to find where that little narrow sliver of focus was, I would physically, I would set it on manual focus, and I would just kind of play around until I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to get me in the neighborhood, put it on the tripod, and then refine that.
And then fine tune,
that zoom in feature. So
absolutely.
Good. She said, excellent advice. Good. So Maria wants to know, what's the best macro to start with? So I'm assuming, what's the best macro lens for starting out? What would you say, Lauren?
I would say if you're on a full frame, anywhere in that 90 to 105 f2.8 range is great. I don't think, I haven't even really seen any macro lenses that go wider than 2.8, but you really wouldn't need it. But if you're on a crop sensor, like when I was on my Canon, is it D80? I forget like which brands have which combination of numbers. 80D, 90D, something like that.
There you go.
Then that was on a crop sensor, so I had a 60mm macro, and that was perfect because it behaved like a 100. So that would be my advice. If you're on a crop sensor, somewhere in the 60 range. If you're on a full frame, somewhere in the 90 to 105 range.
Yep. Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure there is a time and a place for a shorter focal length with macro, and that could yield some interesting results as well. But
and that's no, I was just gonna say that's something a lot of people, when we did the challenge last year, didn't realize, that you can get like 30mm macros, 50mm macros, because macro doesn't mean telephoto. They're not the same thing. But most of the time, a longer focal length combined with the macro is going to give you the most versatility.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. How can we shoot manual and tethered? The focus controls don't work in Capture One in overhead. So Brian, for shooting in manual focus, you won't be able to utilize Capture One or whatever your tethering software is to set that focus. You will manually need to adjust that by moving the focus ring on the actual camera itself.
And then the benefit is you get the much bigger preview on your computer, that as you're making the adjustment, you can really see what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see. Have you ever used focus stacking to create more depth of field? I have not personally used focus stacking. I've done some like poor man's version of focus stacking, but in terms of the utilizing the softwares and things like that, it's not something that I've found personal need for in my work, but there are some great tutorials I'll be sure to link the one that I like the best. I linked it in last week's video, and we talked a little bit about the concept of focus stacking. Lauren, have you used focus stacking?
I've done a little bit of like my own playing around, not the proper, version, but I've done it particularly with things like pour shots or pancake stacks, where I really want to make sure that the pour is in focus, that maybe the best pour doesn't always go with the best rest of pancake shot and the rest. So I'll take a few, moving the depth of field, and then composite them together at the end. And that's worked really well.
Yeah. So there's, I think, varying levels of degrees. The tutorial that I like to share, they're taking many shot after shot, utilizing the various tools and softwares that are out there to achieve those kind of licks. And there's, of course, in the reading from this month's Bookshop Bike Club, goes more into depth on focus stacking as well. So if that's an area that you're interested in, you can definitely go check that out. Let's see. Kyle wants to know, do you use external monitors for shooting tethered? So I can speak to what I personally do. I usually have my little MacBook Pro here, my 2015 MacBook Pro, the last great MacBook Pro they ever made, because it still has USB on it, which is like the best. I'm like, don't die on me, little 2015. It's such a trooper. So I just plug right into that laptop and run it all over the studio. I've tried the wireless iPad solutions, and it's just never worked out for me. When I've got a client in the studio, sometimes I will tether to my larger tower setup, which has a 2-monitor setup, but usually the MacBook Pro is my way to go. What are you doing, Lauren?
Yeah, so I had a 2013 MacBook Pro that I was using for ages, and then about a month ago I bought the 2019, and yesterday came in the post my USB to USB-C adapter, which I'm currently using for my microphone. But yeah, no, to me, the laptop has always been fine. It's easy it's lightweight, it's not like I have to drag a whole monitor in, and I could do that. But most of the time I'm just using the laptop. And I also recently got a tether table, so I can actually stand up at human height and not be hunching over the whole time, which has made a huge difference.
Huge difference. We don't want to ruin your back in the course of this. Physically back-breaking work being a food photographer. I love it. Oh, let's see. Hold on. There's a bunch of questions coming through. Kit lens. Yep. Catalin M says the kit lens is great as long as you have good light, but a 50 millimeter, it's the next go-to. And I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I would prioritize light over anything else. If you get your light right, the lenses, lenses can make a difference. Lenses, and I would say that the lenses then are almost more important than the body too.
Oh, 100%. I'd always spend more money on a lens than on a camera body.
Yeah. I've got a lot of used bodies. For anybody out there, both my Nikon D750 and my Sony A6000, those both were bought used. And I've also got a Canon Rebel T2i. Bought all of those used from B&H, and they've got a really great warranty policy, return policy, and every one of those. Although when the Nikon showed up, it smelled kind of like mothballs, like it had been stored in somebody's attic with those mothballs for preservation. I was like, this thing smells weird, but it's now smells like my studio. So
okay, good.
It smells more like me. So
and it works. So that's the main thing.
But outside of that, it works like a champ, and you save so much money in comparison to buying it brand new. Like the Canon T2, I bought it mostly to make a YouTube video, which will be coming down the road, but I spent $200 on it. So, and it's a quality camera. So things you can do. All right, let's take just a couple more, because we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, and you're probably getting ready for dinner, Lauren. You're going to get hungry here, but pretty soon.
At some point.
Let's see. Have you ever heard of focus issues with the Canon 50 millimeter f1.2? Brandy's hoping she doesn't have a defective lens. I've not personally heard of any. Lauren, have you?
I haven't heard of any problems. If anything, I think that's one of Canon's more expensive lenses. There are certain tests that you can do with a lens. If you haven't calibrated it either, then that might be worth giving it a go, because it could just be that it just needs, something's a bit wonky, it needs to line up. But I would say if you try it, if you calibrate it, you try it out, you're still having issues, I would definitely get in touch with them and just get it checked out. You definitely want to make sure that your gear is working right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Touching base with Canon support. I think a great thing that's really helpful is also make relationships at your local camera store. I just took mine in this week to get my sensor cleaned and the whole body cleaned out, because Lord knows I put that thing through the ringer. And so, granted, I could clean my own sensor, but I'm a little scared to do that. So
yeah, I wouldn't. I don't trust myself to clean my own sensor.
I don't trust myself. I'm a little destructive. So, but I love my local camera store, because I can ask them the questions, be like, does this seem like it's working right? Is there something wrong with this? And they're camera nerds there too. And so they're just as excited to, walk through what you're having challenges with. So definitely connect with your local camera store. Let's see. Are there any, Lauren, do you wear glasses?
I do. I have terrible eyesight.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. So there's a question related to glasses. Are there any specific settings for live view that should be applied if you're wearing glasses, or anything to help regarding better focus?
No, I don't think so. Not as far as I'm aware. I actually have terrible eyesight. So if anyone knows like eyesight numbers and things, I'm currently -16. I've outgrown contact lenses. So I'm wearing contact lenses right now, but I already need more glasses to go on top. So I generally just wear them now for like filming. I'm not legally allowed to drive in them anymore. So
wow.
We've hit the end. But yeah, I mean, as far as live view and tethering and that, it doesn't really change. It's more just about what you can see. Like, make sure you have glasses that allow you to see the best you can, and that's going to be the best way. I mean, when it comes to using the viewfinder on the camera, there is a little wheel that you can adjust to your eyes, but on the computer screen, I don't think there's anything. So
but I'd say if you have vision challenges, probably shooting tethered is going to be a greater advantage, so that you have that larger screen.
Yeah, 100%. I can vouch for that.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. A couple more. Oh, Anita, glad you're here. She says, two of the best ladies. Thank you, Anita. It's glad to have you here. All right. Is it possible to shoot hard light using just a speed light, or is it a continuous light absolutely necessary? Oh no, we
have a video on this exact thing.
That was our last thing that we did together, wasn't it?
It was. And I think, did we both do an example of a natural light, hard light, a speed light, hard light, and a continuous?
I'm sure like the combination of the videos that we did. So if you missed that, which maybe it sounds like you did, is that we did do a series, they're a kind of a collaboration, both of us, on shooting hard light. So watch both of those videos. Go back, what was that, probably like the summertime, early summertime?
Yeah, I think so.
I've lost track of time.
Yeah, me too. So it was sometime in the last year.
But yeah, definitely, because what you need for hard light, small light source, and a speed light is a pretty nice small light source. So, and you can manipulate that and modify that for the kind of hard light that you're trying to achieve. So definitely go check that out. All right, question, do we use presets? Do you use presets, Lauren, for Lightroom?
I don't really. I use a very boring import preset, which sets my color profile, it sets my lens profile corrections, and that's kind of it. I don't apply anything that's going to change color, exposure, light, because with food, I don't know, I just think every image is individual. You will start to notice patterns in your own work and the way that you process. So probably what's most useful is after you get to grips a bit with what you like and what you do, that you create your own presets. There's nothing wrong with presets. I just don't really use them.
No, and I'm myself the same. I mean, I sell presets because I think that when I bought presets, and my intention with selling the presets was the idea that it kind of takes you under the hood of somebody else's editing process.
Yeah.
If you look at the presets that I do have is that there's a similarity between all of them, but then the differences are where it makes it unique. But you know, food is definitely, like Lauren said, such a unique animal in terms of the way that we process images, very specific to the colors. Because, you know, I know like a lot of the presets that are more, you know, wedding focused or lifestyle focused, that, you know, they're really muting the greens, or they're really pumping up the yellows or things like that, which can make our food look weird. So yeah, but I think there's plenty of folks out there, especially when you're still kind of getting your feet into understanding Lightroom and how it works too. The presets can be such a great way, because you can see, oh, that's what they did with the black.
Yeah, I was going to say they're a great learning tool in the beginning to really understand, like, oh, that's what that does. And and also the other thing I was going to say with food is, like, if I was a wedding photographer, I think I 100% would use presets, because I can't imagine editing 1,000 images without using a preset. But with food, we're probably most of the time, hopefully, are not starting with 1,000 shots of whatever it is. So, you know, the process is a lot more curated.
Absolutely.
So you're not spending as much time on like the volume of images.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great point. That's such a great point. Well, good. Well, I think we got through most of it. It looks like let's do one more from Chris. Okay. Chris says, is there a point images stop being photography and become digital art when doing a composite and post-production in Lightroom or Photoshop? Oh, we're getting philosophical.
We're getting deep. I mean, for sure, the world of digital photography has opened up like a whole new creative realm that didn't exist before on film. I guess you could sort of say it's like, is it a filmed movie or a CGI movie? I don't think it's quite gone that far. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it just allows you to be creative in a different way. I still think it's photography.
Yeah.
It's just using it differently. And like, that's cool. It's cool that technology allows us to do more things and try more things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's just all a matter of what you're trying to achieve. What's the purpose of the image? I do think, you know, Andrew Scrivani talks about this in the world of food photography, that he's pretty committed to the concept that food photography is not fine art, and can't be fine art because it's really intended for commercial purposes. But again, it kind of, then it goes back, you know, and we look at some of these macro images that you all submitted, you know, these beautiful shots that sometimes make us stop and wonder, like, what are we looking at? You know, that's when we do start to get into kind of more of that fine art realm and how we can manipulate those in terms of the post-processing, you know, the fun things that can be done. But I think it's really your own personal call on what you're trying to create.
Totally.
I love it. Well, you all, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited that you've been having so much fun with macro photography, and there are lots more fun things to come on both of our channels. I know Lauren's got fun things planned. I've got fun things planned. I am currently in the process of considering our next whoa, watch out.
We just went past 9 p.m.
And Joni's video got demonetized. No. Bike Shot Book Club. It's a mouthful. I'm only on my first cup of coffee, so you gotta excuse me. But still considering the next topic, so I will keep you posted on that. I've got a couple videos coming up of just some odds and ends, including tethering to a Nikon or Nikon, depending on what part of the world you are, tethering to a Nikon camera with live view using different softwares, because I've got a tutorial on Canon. And so for you Nikon users, this one goes out to you, because I love you just as much, I promise. People are like, oh, get off the Canon train, but it's all good no matter what camera you're shooting. So with that, just a reminder too, we've got links down in the description box below to Lauren's resources on macro photography, as well as the wait list for her Food Photography Academy, which is going to be an incredible resource. You definitely got to go check it out. But I think that's it. Do you have anything else, Lauren? We good?
I'm good. I'm all good.
We're good. Well, thanks so much for being here, guys. It was great to see you, and we will catch you next time. All right?
Bye. Thanks for having me.